This is another story from my dad. Hope you feel better soon, Daddy. Love you. This is the Golden Goose. There once was a man who had 3 sons. The youngest of all was simply called the Simpleton. He was laughed at and despised and neglected on all occasions, for he was not as crafty or as clever as his brothers, but he had a very kind heart and took it all in stride. Now it happened one day that the eldest son wanted to go into the forest to saw some wood, so his mother gave him a beautiful cake and a bottle of wine to take with him, so he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. When he came to the wood, he met a little old man who bid him good day and said, "Please give me a small piece of the cake in your wallet, and let me drink a mouthful of your wine. I'm so hungry and thirsty." But the eldest son said, "If I were to give you my cake and wine, I would have none for myself. If you want to eat, then go and work. Be off with you." And he left the little man standing there, and he walked away. Hardly had begun to chop down a tree when his axe slipped and cut his arm so fiercely that he had to go home at once and have the wound bound up. And this was the work of that little gray man. The second son decided to take up the mantle from his brother, and he went into the wood, and his mother gave him another sweet cake and a bottle of wine. The little old man met him also, and begged for a small piece of cake and a drink of wine, and the second son spoke out plainly, "Get away from me, you ugly little man. I have no time to waste with you. I am busy and must chop my wood." For he was very industrial and resourceful, but did not have a kind bone in his body. Punishment was not long in coming to him, for he had only given 2 strokes of an axe when he cut his leg so fiercely that he had to be carried home. And the simpleton, seeing his brothers out of work, said, "Father, let me go into the forest and saw some wood." And his father answered him, "Your brothers have done themselves much harm, and as you understand nothing about wood cutting, you'd better not try, else you'll cut off your head." But Simpleton begged for so long that the father said, "Well, go if you want, experience might make you wiser." And to him the mother didn't waste her good ingredients. She gave him a little burned cake made out of water instead of milk, and with it she gave him a small bottle of beer that she found in the back of the cupboard. When he came to the wood, the little gray man met Simpleton and greeted him, and said, "Please, sir, give me a slice of a cake and a drink from your bottle. I am so hungry and thirsty." The simpleton replied, "I only have a burned cake and some sour beer, but if you want it, then let us sit down and eat together." So they sat down and had a little picnic, and as the simpleton ate his food, it became a rich cake, and the sour beer became good wine. So they ate and drank together, and when the meal was finished, the little man said, "You have a good heart, and so willingly shared your own. I will grant you good fortune. Yonder there is an old tree. Chop it down, and in its roots you will find something wonderful." Saying this, the old man took his departure, and off went Simpleton and cut down the tree. And when it fell, there among its roots sat a goose with feathers made of pure, shining gold. He lifted her out and carried her with him to an inn, where he intended to stay the night. Now the innkeeper had 3 daughters, who upon seeing the goose were curious to know what kind of wonderful bird it could be, and they longed to have one of its golden feathers. The eldest daughter thought to herself, "Surely a chance will come to me to pull one of those feathers." So when Simpleton had gone out, she caught the goose by the wing, but there her hand stuck fast. Shortly afterwards the second daughter came in, and she was longing for a golden feather. She had hardly touched her sister, however, when she also stuck fast. And lastly came the third daughter with the same objective. And this the others cried out, "Keep away, for goodness sake, keep away!" But she didn't understand why they told her, and thought to herself, "If they got the goose, why should I not?" She sprang forward, and as she touched her sister, she too became stuck fast, and pull as she might, she could not get away. and thus they all had to sleep the night behind the goose. In the morning the simpleton came out of his room, took the goose under his arm, and went on his way without troubling himself about the three girls who were now hanging on to the bird and following after him. There they went, always trotting behind him, now to the right, now to the left, whichever way he chose to go. In the middle of the fields they met the parson, and he saw the procession. He called out, "Shame on you, you naughty girls, hanging on to boys like that! Why do you run after this young fellow in this way? Come on, let go!" And with this he caught the youngest by the hand and tried to pull her back, but when he touched her he found he could not get away, and he too needed to run behind. Then the mayor came and saw the parson following on the heels of the three girls. This astonished him, and he called out, "Sir Parson, where are you going away so fast? Do you forget today we have a christening?" And he ran after him and caught him by the coat, but he too remained sticking fast, and was amazed, for he thought the parson had just been slacking off and chasing young women. As the five now ran on, one behind the other, two laborers were returning from the field with their tools and came along. The parson called out and begged that they would set him and the other man free, and no sooner had they touched him, they too had to hang on, and now there were seven, all running after Simpleton and the goose. In this way they came to a city where a king reigned who only had a daughter, and she was so serious that nobody could make her laugh or smile. Therefore he announced whoever should make her laugh should have her for his wife. When the simpleton heard about this, he went with his goose and his train before the princess, and when she saw them coming over the hill, all running behind each other, crying and shouting, she began to laugh and laughed and laughed, and it seemed it would never stop. Thereupon the simpleton asked her for his wife, but the king was not pleased at the thought of such a son-in-law, and he made all kinds of objections. He told Simpleton he must bring him a man who could drink a whole cellar of wine. At once the simpleton thought of the little gray man who would be sure to help him, so he went off to the wood and the place where he had cut down the tree, and he saw the man who looked most miserable. The simpleton asked what caused him all of the trouble, ignoring the procession of people who still followed behind him, clutching his golden goose. "I have such a thirst," the man answered, "and I cannot quench it. I cannot bear cold water. I have emptied a cask of wine, but what is a drop like that to a thirsty man?" "In that case I can help you," said the simpleton. "Just come with me and you will be satisfied." He led him to the king's cellar, and the man at once sat down in front of the great cask, and drank and drank and drank before a day was over, and he had drunk the whole cellar full of wine. Then the simpleton, with his procession of people stuck to his golden goose, demanded his bride again. But the king was angry that a mean fellow, everyone called a simpleton, should win his daughter, and he made a new condition. Before giving him his daughter, he said that the simpleton must find a man who would eat a whole mountain of bread. Simpleton did not stop long to consider, but went off with his party straight to the wood. In the same place as before sat a man who was buckling a strap tightly around him and looking very depressed. He said, "I have eaten a whole oven full of loaves, but what is that to a man as hungry as I am? I am so empty, and I must strap myself together if I am not to die of hunger." Simpleton was delighted on hearing this, and said, "Get up at once and come with me, and I will give you enough to satisfy your hunger." He led him to the king, who had ordered all the meal in the kingdom to be brought together, and an immense mountain of bread baked from it. The man in the wood set to work on it, and in one day the whole mountain had disappeared. For the third time Simpleton asked for his bride, and again the king tried to put him off, and said he must bring him a ship that would go on both land and water. "If you are able to sail such a ship," he said, "you shall at once have my daughter for your wife." Simpleton went into the wood with his procession of people clinging to the golden goose, and there sat the little gray man to whom he had given his cake so long ago it seemed now. "I have drunk for you, and I have eaten for you," said the little man, "and I will give you the ship. I do all this because you were kind to me when nobody else would be." And he gave Simpleton a ship that went on both land and water, and when the king saw it, he knew he could no longer keep back his daughter, who was very joyful to have such a humorous husband, as well as such a kind man to be her husband. The wedding was celebrated, and Simpleton inherited the kingdom and lived happily ever after with his wife. And even then, people still clung to the golden goose and were forced to follow him around for the rest of his days. And that's the story of the golden goose, and I really hope you liked it.